Winston Ottley. I think I turned 61 this year. I am from this area. I was not born on the island, but my parents are, both parents, mother and father, are Grenadians, and so I grew up here and I grew up in Trinidad, both sides, but I spent most of my time in Grenada. And I grew up just a little bit up on top of the hill there, Mt.Cassel. That's where I grew up. I've been farming commercially for the last maybe 30, 35 years. But I've been involved in farming since a child, with my parents. My mother always said my first job as a farmer was to pick up, well, as a child, was to pick up eggs. And that's before I turned 6 or 7. I was just a kid.
How has it been for you over the years?
It has been good, with a lot of challenges. Sometimes positive, sometimes negative, but when you love something, you feel to give it up one day, and you're sure you're going to give it up, and then after you sleep and wake, you know it's not possible. So you just come right back to it, and you look for solutions to your problems. I've farmed both. I've farmed here, I've farmed in Trinidad, and I like farming in Grenada, but it's extremely challenging, and it is becoming more and more challenging now. Sometimes as farmers, you have to say what I believe is true. It's not necessarily what people would like you to say, but it's what we need to probably hear so that we can make the necessary adjustments. My personal view is that we see farmers as important people.
What would you say are some of the challenges you would have faced over the years as a farmer?
Sometimes fluctuation in prices, adequate inputs, sometimes adequate information on what needs to be done. The challenge with markets, how we handle markets, not just from the top, but how you engage farmers in dealing with markets. Sometimes prices are just pushed on our farmer without explanation. That's what we're going to give you, regardless of what your cost and what it is. For a lot of years, decades, farmers had serious problems with perennial larceny.
Tell me about the crops that you plant.
As if you look around, my vegetable crops, well, now I'm into corn, which is, I always had a little, but now I'm beginning to do it commercially. Pawpaw has always been one that I would do. Tomato and bell peppers. Those are kind of regular crops for me in terms of vegetables. Potatoes, yams, these are things I stagger through. You grow it for 2 years, then you don't grow it again, and you rotate that. I have avocados, I have coconuts. I'm fighting with the beetles. I'm prepared to replant. I planted more than 200 coconut trees, and I probably just have about 25. That's from Ivan on. But I'm going to plant back at least another acre or 2 of coconut. I believe I have a new strategy that I think can work, and I'm actually doing my own research on control of the beetles, not just trapping, but actually killing and preventing. But that's my work for the time being, and I believe I can get it going, and I will just do that on my plot. I have other things, little things that go in. I keep changing. So that I had an acre of guavas at one time for processing. I had carambolas, same thing for processing. I had wax apple when it was new. I had an acre of wax apple, and you made good money from it. But as time changed, and you got to change with it, and that's. But I love vegetables.
What sort of positives do you see coming out of cultivating coconuts?
One of the positives that we can, well, there are several positives. One, we can produce our own oil like we used to. I remember going to the factory in Tempe and buy oil for Mr. Kumansing by the drums. Um, then you have the other industry like the broom. You can use the what we call the flex, the branches for broom. We can get into shredding um, the fiber as because you get the coconut coir, you get the mats, you get lots of other things like that. Can also get medicine, the coconut roots, the coconut um, the flowers. We can use it for some forms of medicine. We have um, can also have out of the craft industry. When I was growing up as a kid, we did quite a bit of craft with coconut shells, and I think that's another area. Um, it's probably one of the best when burnt, as a charcoal. It probably becomes one of the best activated charcoal. Um, so the so there's that. Then there's the um, supportive industry, the spin-off industry, like for the bees. So if you have coconuts, then you can have your apiaries can do well, between there, and I see it as a means of securing food, oil, and some protein, quite a bit of protein and minerals, or vitamins and minerals in that. So it's as a health food. I think it's number one when put together with our breadfruit and things like that. So we good to go with that. So I think these are some positives, and it would at least it can create several sustainable jobs because there are different areas that people can work on. Every sector has a different group of people that can work and make a living out of it.
What has worked best for you in your cultivation over the years?
No one crop has worked best. The situation, the circumstance determines what would work. There are times when I would have kept cassavas, and it still is a good crop for me. It be using the local industry because you have people who buy every week, or every 2 weeks. It behaves a little bit like nutmegs for the people who do not have nutmegs. So every week or every 2 weeks, you got a cash flow. So cassavas have worked well in that respect. Other than that, what has been very consistent is vegetable crop, tomatoes, peppers, bell peppers for me. Um, those are probably my more consistent commercial things. Pawpaw, well, I should not list. Pawpaw probably is number one. All right. Um, so that's probably my best crops. There are other crops that work, but not the ones that I will focus on. I did other crops for different purposes, like mango. I have mangoes. Um, I've not been able to utilize that the way that I want to, but it's there. I have 2 acres of mangoes there, and we're just getting into the process of getting it ready for commercial production.
Is there a fertilization method or an irrigation method that that brings good yields to you?
Fertilization, yes, I because of the kind of soil and the fertilizer that we get, the um, commercial shops would import for us. Sometimes you do not get the balance that you want or you might need for a particular crop. I enjoy blending my own fertilizers. So get all the traits and blend. That's what has worked best for me over the years. Whenever I blend, I get the results that I am looking for.
And do you apply fertilizer to all of your crops?
Yes, I apply. I know some people do not like the idea of fertilizer using what they refer to as chemical fertilizers, but all fertilizers are chemicals, whether they're organic or inorganic. Um, and I use it as much as possible, but I also use a lot of compost, so that reduces the amount of fertilizers that I may use in a particular crop. And I constantly look for new methods. I try to see what is happening somewhere else in the world, what somebody has tried, and if it's working for them, and see if I can tweak it a little and see if it will work for me. I mean, I run little trials all the time on different things. The ones that work for me, that I see maybe producing some results, I would try. And something doesn't really work the way that you want it to, you just leave it alone. But at least you try. So that's my kind of approach with fertilizer. I'm here alone since, well, even before COVID. I'm alone here. I work alone, and that's where you realize I've changed how I farm. I used to have up to about 5 persons working. And this is a reality that we don't like to talk about much, because sometimes I've had some good workers, very good workers, but I've had some who will be here and your stuff disappear, and that's a problem that farmers have. Their crops disappear. Not that you don't want to give something to your workers, but you once you begin to harvest, you tweak back sometimes, or you do it, and you see people move with stuff. You catch them up red-handed. They sell your stuff to other people. They make arrangements with other people to pick up stuff. They themselves don't come sometimes. I do my background work. I check. I just don't say anything sometimes. I mean, you just have to allow things to roll. That's the only way you'll be able to pick up information. And so that's a serious problem that we have been having in terms of the people with workers. And so for me, I've decided that if it's costing me this much, cost you $50,000, $60,000 a year, and you still have to put out this much work to pay. It's better I make that 60,000 for myself and just do what I can do, right? So what I've also done is to invest in machinery, some form of machinery. I have a little tractor that I can use, so it has cut my labor costs significantly. Yeah.
And I have not noticed a water source close by, and then you do multiple crops. So how has it been for you with water?
Water is always a challenging thing. I never seem to get lands that are right next to a good water source. So I always have to be moving water from somewhere, and that has constantly been a challenge. 2010, I have a pond up in the middle there, and 2010, when we had that drought in October, that water level went right down. At the time, I used to be taking about 20% of the water from that particular area. When I measured it, because I was trying to do some see if I can do electricity, and we were getting 15 gallons per minute on what I was taking. Now that water in 2010, it went right down, so it went to actually to just a trickle. So I had to stop that. It has never come back, so I had to take water lower down. That now, since 2010, that has continued to go right down. And at present, I just went into the bigger river on the other side, which has a lot of water. I've not measured the flow yet, which I plan to go and do. And so that I will have to bring water from there over here no later than next year. And possibly I should have done it this year, because if I'm going to do corn, I must have enough water. And I'm doing plantings as well. I intend to do that a little different. I want to have irrigation. The coconuts, I want to have irrigation in the coconuts as well. So I must go and get that water. What I would also like to say as well is that, well, in terms of encouraging farmers, or I think the ministry over the years has done quite a bit of training, and so repeatedly done some training in collaboration sometimes with ICA or FAO, and I personally have benefited from those trainings. I've benefited from some of the exposure, particularly with ICA, and I really, want to thank them for that. My exposure to Mexico, on a water, what was it? It was on conservation, water, soil and water conservation, and then in Jamaica, again, through ICA, on greenhouse production, So the ministry have done a number of different kinds of training. I had training also through the Ministry of Agriculture in Trinidad as well, and then my own work. So I would, I believe that if we are going to be able to secure our food, secure health, secure productivity, we would need to have our farmers trained more, not just head knowledge, but be able to actually apply techniques and tweak for ourselves, what will work for us, because what works for one person does not necessarily work for the other person. And I think, I have to commend the ministry, and I hope they will continue to do that. I believe that they should push it further. A bit more training. Sometimes it has to be a little more intense. Probably sometimes some academics, and then out in the field. I think you need to sometimes go out and make sure that people understand what you teach them. You may say it's the farmer's responsibility, but I think it's also we will lose a lot more if we don't do it, because people will be just doing things and not being able to get the results that we're looking for.
In terms of giving advice to farmers, young farmers who are just getting into it, or persons who are thinking about getting into it, what would you say to them?
I would encourage more young people to get into farming. Let me change when we say farming, let me change that statement. Sometimes we say farming and people see a fork, a hoe, a spade, dirt. Well, I like to say dirt is soil. I don't just say dirt. Whatever you see around there is good. Anything you see around you is good. We just have to find a way to use it. So I say that, I would like to encourage people to get into the agricultural sector. So you have the people, those of us who want to produce crops. They have those of us who want to get into research. We're not doing research. We need to have that research. The farmer doesn't have the time to do all the research. Somebody has to do that research. So there are those areas there. There's the processing. We can process and export, and in terms of, take for example, we had the issue in Lasajes with the mangrove. But do we have the data to support that? Do we know what organisms are there? What animals are there? Do we know what was there 40 years before? Because I know there without the mangrove, right? So do we have that data? We need people. This is agricultural sector. We need people who will get into that kind of. So it's not just the dirt, not just the soil, not just the food production. There's a whole chain, and everybody is important in that chain. Not everybody have to get dirty. Some people could be clean. So I encourage people to spend time investigating the agricultural sector. I think it's the widest sector in the world. If you study in agriculture, you can work just about anywhere in almost any other field when you look at the agricultural sector. It's a science, and it is hinged onto just about everything else. So I would encourage people to study it, look into it. Don't just look at medicine. Good food is better medicine. All right. So I think we should, ask people to. I would encourage people to, and parents, not just children, young people. I would encourage parents to encourage their children into the sector. We encourage them to be lawyers. We encourage them to be doctors. We encourage them to be teachers, because we see those as clean jobs. But sustainable jobs could come from agriculture. In fact, without food, nobody has a job. Everybody else will die. All of us will die without food. So it's important for us to secure food, then we'll be able to secure every other industry that we have.